Hi, my name is Summer,
And I'm Melissa.
and our presentation is on how to conduct early reading CBMs. What is an early reading CBM? An early reading CBM is an assessment tool used to measure students' reading progress. CBMs are a quick and reliable way to assess students' reading skills, and they aid teachers in adjusting instruction and coming up with different interventions that better support all their students. Universal screening should be done 3 times a year, and students should be progress monitored at least once a week. Early reading CBM includes rate and accuracy in their measurements. Rate, often referred to as fluency, allows teachers to determine how automatically students can perform a task. This is important because automaticity demonstrates that the student has mastered the skill. Accuracy is simply, does the student understand it and did they get it correct?
Conducting early reading CBMs is important because they are used as a tool for progress monitoring that can identify students who are at risk or near risk of developing reading difficulties and provide them with early intervention. They're also used to inform reading instruction, to signal a need for change, or to validate existing reading instruction. They're also used to track student progress over time and evaluate the effectiveness of teaching methods. CBMs provide a database for each student so that instructional decisions can be made in a timely manner. Note, our article adds that emotional and environmental concerns may influence a student's academic performance and therefore their CBM data, and that it's important to continue collecting CBM data as often and effectively as possible so that you can stay informed on their reading behavior. These influences may be from cultural differences or challenges associated with a disability, among other factors.
So our chapter covered 6 different early reading CBMs. So we will be reviewing the following 6 reading CBMs: onset sound CBM, phoneme segmenting CBM, letter naming CBM, letter sound CBM, nonsense word CBM, and lastly, word identification CBM.
A lot of the CBMs have similar components. For example, all of the assessments explained in this presentation are going to be conducted individualized, which means that it's one teacher to one student. The teacher will also supply students with either words, pictures, or letters depending on the CBM being used. The student will be asked to complete the specific assessment in a given time period for most of the CBMs. The teacher will record the correct answers in that given time period, and results are used to monitor progress over time. An important consideration is that dialect and articulation differences, such as accents or differences in pronunciation due to ELL learners or other differences, are going to be marked as correct, even though they're technically different than how you would typically pronounce them.
So the first CBM that our chapter talked about was onset sound CBM. Onset sound is an assessment tool used to measure a student's ability to recognize and produce the beginning sounds, also known as onset sounds, in words. Students are asked to produce the first sound of each word. The onset sound is the initial sound of the word, such as the C, K in cat.
The next CBM is phoneme segmenting CBMs. These are used to evaluate a student's proficiency in phoneme segmenting, which is the ability to break down words into individual sounds. This is an important skill in developing reading and spelling abilities. For example, a teacher may say the word trip, and a student must be able to break that into the 4 phonemes t, I, p, in order to be marked as correct.
Another one our chapter talked about was letter naming CBM. This form of CBM evaluates the student's ability to recognize and name the different letters of the alphabet. The teacher will provide the student with a list of letters randomly arranged. Students are asked to name as many letters as possible.
Similarly, the letter sound CBM gives students a list of letters that are randomly arranged, except this time, students are asked to produce the sound associated with each letter. There will be the consonant letters, and then for vowels, most CBMs will also use the long vowel sounds and the short vowel sounds.
So another one our chapter talked about was nonsense words. This evaluates the student's ability to decode unfamiliar words using their phonics skills. The teacher will provide the student with a list of made-up words that follow the phonic rules of the English language, but that don't actually have any meaning. Students are asked to read each word aloud. There are some examples provided here below.
Another important CBM is word identification. This evaluates the student's ability to read and identify words accurately and quickly. This is important for developing overall reading fluency. For the CBM, the teacher will provide the student with a list of words at the student's instructional level, which means that the words are challenging but not so difficult that the student is frustrated and will stop reading. Students will be asked to read each word out loud, and they will be scored on how many words they can get correct in 1 minute.
So, after talking about the 6 different CBMs, we are now going to talk about how to interpret the CBM scores. Reading CBM scores are typically reported in terms of the number correct within a certain time period. This time period is usually 1 minute. To interpret reading CBM scores, it is important to consider both the number of correct responses and the time taken to complete the CBM. It is also important to interpret these scores in conjunction with other assessments and classroom observations to gain a complete picture of the student's reading abilities. Higher scores will often indicate better performance and more improvement overall. Caution: ELL learners have different pronunciations of certain English phonemes. While most teachers may think to mark these incorrect, these should not be considered incorrect, but rather a variation of their native language.
Calculating CBM scores can seem really tricky. Here are 2 ways that you can calculate the scores. The onset score is listed as the rate, which is the total number of correct answers divided by the total of seconds to complete times 60. And the accuracy is calculated by the total number of correct words or items divided by the total number of attempts. This will give you the percent correct. All other reading CBMs talked about in this video will use the bottom formula, which is total attempted minus the total number of errors. This will give you the total correct per minute, or the rate score. The accuracy score will be calculated by dividing the total number of correct divided by the total attempted, which will equal the percent correct.
Now, many teachers often wonder how they should use these scores when writing IEP goals. We have listed a few steps to follow when working with this process. First, review the CBM data to determine where the student is performing below grade level or where improvement should be made. Then, write a specific goal that addresses that identified area of need. The goal should be clear and measurable. One example of a good goal is the student will increase their reading fluency by correctly identifying 100 words per minute on a 3rd grade level passage by the end of the school year. Third, make sure the goals and objectives are achievable and relevant to the student's needs and abilities. Now, this may involve consulting with the student, their parents or guardians, as well as other members of the educational team. Lastly, always continue to progress monitor and assess the student's progress towards their goals, and adjust goals and objectives as needed based on their new CBM data.
Now for our activity, there'll be 2 parts that you're going to do. The first part is to watch the video, which is linked below. That video is of us explaining how to go through a letter naming CBM, and then we have a link to the Core Phonics Survey, which is a compilation of multiple CBMs put together for efficiency when a teacher would do this in the classroom. Rather than doing 5 different CBMs, they're all together. So this Core Phonics Survey will open to a link, and there are really clear instructions on it, so I would recommend thoroughly reading it. You're just going to do this with someone at home, such as like a friend or relative or roommate, and just mark down as a practice what their scores are going to be. And keep in mind that dialect and articulation differences are marked as correct when scoring.
Now it is quiz time. If you click the link that says Chapter 3 Quiz, it will automatically direct you to a Google form. You are going to fill out the Google form and submit it when you are done. All the questions are relating to information that have been covered in the earlier parts of this presentation. And here are our references. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you. Bye.